detention facilities and ultimately to Guantanamo. Were you aware of this plan, and could you perhaps elaborate on that?
In short, no, I wasn't aware of this plan, so I can't really elaborate. I know that when you speak to Ruhul Ahmed, he has more knowledge about what happened up in the north and about some of the massacres that took place there before people were handed over to the US military. But in specific to answer to your question about the real enemy combatants, as you put it, I don't know what techniques were used.
Mr. Muazzam Beg, thank you very much for your testimony. And we will, of course, evaluate it with in the light and context of your very vivid graphic description. I have one question and one request. My question is, you said that 2 years after custody, you were paid consular visits by the British officers coming there on behalf of the British government. What we would like to know is, did they come to, as normally consulars should do, to assist you, or was this in furtherance of the US detention plans? That's the first point. My request is that you talk about a movie or a video called Taxi to Dark Side, which corroborates your testimony, and if you could, if it is possible at all, to point us in the direction of obtaining this so that we can also have a look at it in our deliberations. Thank you.
In the second part, which I'll answer first, I've given a copy of this film both to Tun Dr. Mahathir Mohamad and to Hans. But also, the first part of your question is that the first British consular visits that took place in Guantanamo were taking place with MI5, with the intelligence service present, so I didn't know that it was a consular visit. You couldn't differentiate, you couldn't distinguish between who is from the Foreign Office and who is the intelligence officer. When they realized their mistake, then the following subsequent visits would take place with the Foreign Office official coming on one day and then the intelligence officer coming on the next day. It was clear to me that they had come to Guantanamo together. As far as the consular access was concerned, they asked general sort of consular questions. They said that this is not our jurisdiction, this is an American jurisdiction, and that we have no say over here, and that we can only ask about your welfare, which was neither here nor there really. The other thing that I think that they did clearly in the initial stages was that they had, after the United States and the United Kingdom agreeing on the process of the military commissions, which later were found by the British Attorney General Lord Goldsmith to be inadequate and said as such. At that point in the initial stages, the British government had actually agreed with the process of the military commissions. And that's what they told me.
Can I just briefly just follow up on your answers? Did they explain to you ever at that time or subsequently why they had not, you being a British citizen, not assisted you in any way right from the outset? And the other point is, have they ever since apologized or agreed to make to pursue this, for example, with the United States government for detaining a citizen illegally, because there have been no charges laid against? And the final point is, you were released. Was it through their efforts, or was it the strength of the public opinion that at that time was very strong against Guantanamo? Thank you.
They didn't explain. I did ask them several times, why has it taken so long for you to come? Their response was as bizarre as I'm going to give it to you. Why do you think? Why do you think we didn't come? I said, I don't know, that's why I'm asking you. And that was it. That was the only explanation they gave me. The whole idea or defense was that this is not our show, this is the American show, we are only guests here. We are only, we have no say in what's taking place. And sorry, I've lost your other questions too. Can you repeat your other questions?
I think it doesn't matter. I think I get the flow. The thing, what the Commission would like to know is the extent to which the British government was complicit, British leaders were complicit in this whole solid affair. That is the thrust of our question.
I can produce for the Commission in a later stage documentation of my case against the British Intelligence Service and the government, which I'm more than happy to provide to you through my lawyers and so forth. But the gist of it is that the British, I believe that this incarceration of myself and other British citizens could not have taken place and could not have continued without the involvement of the British government, who I believe are the closest allies of the USA in the war on terror and knew exactly what was going on throughout the proceedings.
I just have a supplemental question to what I mentioned earlier. To your knowledge, when you were detained in Guantanamo, were there any actual were there any detainees which were in fact combatants in the real sense of the word, of being engaged in combat? And could you perhaps identify or give us an idea as to whether the detainees were combatants or civilians, since there was in fact a policy not of arresting and detaining combatants, but in fact non-combatants by kidnapping civilians in different countries around the world. And so the composition of the detainees, to your knowledge, is a very important consideration.
I believe there are statistic details available that mention 92% of the people captured and held in Guantanamo Bay were not captured on the battlefield and were not part of Al-Qaeda or Taliban. The remaining 8% include about 6% of Taliban, 2% Al-Qaeda. If you look at the statistics, the numbers of people that were handed over, the largest group were handed over by Pakistan. Pakistan was not at war at the time. There was no war taking place in Pakistan. And 600 plus people was handed over. I have a book called Enemy Combatant, which I wrote after I returned from Guantanamo. And I have the same publisher as the publisher of Pervez Musharraf's book, In the Line of Fire. In his book, he says that he received bounties of millions of dollars for the people that he turned over to the United States of America. So clearly, they weren't captured on the battlefield, they were sold for a fee.
Mr. Beg, I know you did say that the mental torture you experienced was far more intense than the physical torture, and that you had a visit from a female psychiatrist who in fact suggested that you commit suicide. Were there any visits by physicians to examine the extent of the damage, either through the military or by any outside groups?
The only medical examinations I had, and I believe any of the other prisoners had in Guantanamo, and to this day is true, were from the military, whether it's from the US Army or whether it's from the US Navy or Air Force, or I think they call them psychological operations units. They were only military. And although I was told that these are supposed to be for my psychological welfare, evidently to me that was not the case. And I'm sure that other prisoners who had similar experiences, who had much more harrowing stories, they have a unit in Guantanamo called the Maximum Security Unit, where they take prisoners who have been psychologically abused and degraded and kept there, we're told, for their own safety.
Could we also have copies of your book, Enemy Combatant?
You could if you go to Amazon.com.